Good afternoon and welcome to the Legacy Estates. I'm Executive Chef Keenan. And first of all, I'd like to explain that yes, we are all fully vaccinated here at the Legacy Estates and our other two facilities as well. So I'm not going to have my mask on today. But the reason I'm here today is that I'm standing on the threshold of retirement. So today we're going to do one more of a presentation on my behalf, and we decided to do a little dessert called Baklava. This is a real fun dessert. It's easy to make, it's fun to make, and it's also outstanding and it's delicious. First of all, what I'm going to do is start out with Phyllo Dough, and it's probably the most paper thin anything you'll ever see in your life. It's extremely thin. And you can buy this in the frozen section at your grocery store, probably where the pies and pastries are. And it is a little difficult to work with. It's a little bit irritating because it is kind of a very, very delicate, very thin dough, but that's what makes it so good. So today I'm going to walk us through this. It's a very easy process. It's not too difficult. This is what the Phyllo dough would look like, similar to this. It'll be in the frozen section, as I said. And inside that box will be wrapped up like this. It'll be several sheets wrapped up and rolled up for you to use and make whatever you want to make. So I'm going to start by unfolding this. And I'll explain this the best of my ability as I go along. And I'm going to start with a couple of sheets of Phyllo dough. Get it unfolded here. There we go. Now it's really very silky, smooth dough. It's very, very, very silky feeling. You can pick up a couple of pieces at once. I think I have 2 pieces right now. You can see it is very vulnerable. It will break. It does tear rather easily. This happens to just fit perfectly into our sheet pan. Now at home, you'll probably have one about half this size, maybe a 9 by 12, but this is what we call a 1/2 sheet pan. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to just tuck that in there gingerly. As you can see, I just layers right in there. How nice that is, because this is more of the institutional. It's a little bit bigger than what you might get in the grocery store. I'm going to go ahead, and as I layer these in there, I'm going to butter these up. And I have right here I have with me this is unsalted butter. I'm going to go ahead and just brush some butter on here. And if you want to do a couple of sheets at a time, that's fine. I don't think you have to do 1 sheet, then 2 sheets, but I'll show you and just demonstrate how I do it. You just want to butter this up gingerly. Don't have to be real thick with it, but you don't want to be real stingy either, because we're going to put 2 more layers on here, and this is going to be a very buttery dish. So you don't have to be exactly perfectly with it. And you can tell because it'll be very, very glossy. It's very glossy where the butter is. But I'm going to go ahead and just put it on in there, because it's going to be delicious. This is one of the first items I baked when I was in culinary class, in my baking class, and it's just wonderful. It was really fun. It turns out really well. It turns out really nice. It's a fun dessert, but it's very, very rich. You don't need a real large piece. It goes extremely well with coffee or an after dinner drink. Would probably be very fun too, very rich. Okay, we have our first layer, first really good base on there. It's nice and glossy. I can tell if there's a little bit of dry in there. You can see it. I go ahead and I'll just butter those up, so I can see the light reflecting off of it. I have a very good base, and you can see that the dough is not moving around. It's not sliding around on us. Now we're going to go ahead and make the filling. So I'm going to go over here to a little bit. Brought my little cuisine art from home. It's about a 1 quart. It works really well for me. I've had this for years and I really like it. I really enjoy it. And I'm going to go ahead on using walnuts. And also today I'm going to use pistachios. Convenience sake, these are shelled, so I'm going to use those today too. I'm going to put in about half of it. The pistachios are a little harder nut than the walnuts are. Let's see, where did I put my little, there it is. I think this works better if you grind these just a little finer. I think if they're too coarse, sometimes the phyllo dough will be a little too high for me, so I like mine a little finer. And it looks about like that. It looks pretty good if you can see that. It looks like it's pretty fine, not real heavily ground, but a coarse grind, coarse chop. And that works pretty well for me. Now I'm going to take that, and I'm going to put a little cinnamon in there. And I'm just going to gingerly mix that up. I could probably put it on there and grind them up as I'm going, but just kind of show you what I'm doing here. And I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to just evenly sprinkle this over our phyllo dough. Not too much, not too little. Be sure to get to the edges like if you're making a pizza. You want the edge of the pizza to be pretty filled all the way to the edge. You don't want to leave the edges too empty. I can see those pistachios in there and they look really pretty good. And I have more mixed. I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. Now if you wanted to, I'm sure you could use pecans or you could use cashews or something else if you wanted to, but traditionally this is what we do. It's got that looks pretty even to me. Brush them around a little bit. Now it's been about 35 years since I've made this in school, but I make it at home once in a while. For special occasions. It's always a crowd pleaser. Now I'm going to go ahead, I've got that on there, maybe throw a little more butter on there, it looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a couple more sheets of phyllo dough. Whoop. And you notice it tears easily. That's why it's not real fun to work with. See, it tears pretty readily. Now you can keep this covered with a damp cloth. It'll keep it somewhat dried as you go. Hopefully we won't be there this long. We're going to get it on there, expedite this. There's one sheet. Here's another one. I'm going to put this on the left side, overlap it a little bit. This is where it begins to get a little bit better, because now we're only going to go 2 sheets of phyllo dough compared to 7 or 8. Then we just repeat the same process. Now I got a couple sheets on there. I'm going to go ahead and give it another course of the filling. And the pistachios are a little bit bigger than the walnuts are there. You should probably chop them first because they are a little bit harder in texture. They're not terribly hard. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and grind up the next batch. You can have this all done ahead of time, but this way you'll kind of see what we're doing, so you'll know. One or two. Put a little bit more on there. sure and get your edges. I like the edges where it's nice and crusty and get that caramel and that sauce in there. Some people don't like the edges or the ends, but I do. It's pretty darn good there. Okay then, I just go ahead and I repeat this process again. This time I'm going to put 2 pieces on at once. Fold over that little excess. Pack it down a little bit. You can't really go wrong with this. Then you just repeat the process and go ahead and butter it up. Now my last layer, I'm going to probably put back on 5 or 6 sheets for the top layer. Like that. There you are. Be sure and get the edges so that they're nice and buttery, which they are. And I'm going to go ahead and give it another. There's probably about enough left there to give another layer. We'll grind up some more. Start at the edges there and work your way out. I have a little bit more here, so I'm going to go ahead and grind up a little bit more, or this little bit here. Then as soon as we get this all cut up, we'll get it in the oven, and then we'll make, while this is baking, we're going to make the simple syrup that goes on top of this, which is very fun, very delicious. You can make your own pancake syrup at home if you like. You can modify the flavors quite a bit. Fold that over. That. Looking very good. It's starting to look like something. There we go. A couple more flavors on here. So we'll give us around 6 layers. And that'll give us a real nice topping for us. A little bit more butter. A little bit more on here. Again, we're just repeating the process. Looks very good. Sure to get your edges and the corners tucked in. It's getting pretty full. I can tell by the edges are filling up pretty fast. I'll fold that over real quick. Put a couple more brushes on there. Get our edges real nice. It's a lot of fun to make because it can sit for a day or two. It can sit for 2 or 3 days. And it tastes even better. I think it's actually better the day after once it sits, and it just all those flavors meld together. Again, if you want, this will be like number 7 sheet. Press that in there, and you can see the butter just coming through there. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this one on there, put one more on there, and we'll cut it up and score it. There's that one. Get in there. There we go. Okay, that about wraps that section up. Now, so we're going to do is bake this off at about 350, and we're going to make the sauce, and we'll come back in a little bit. So here, I'm going to show you real briefly before I go. We're going to cut this. I have a serrated knife. It's a real small, fine serrated knife that will cut through here a little bit better. Just when you cut through the pan, don't cut all the way through the aluminum. You just want to cut down to it or to the bottom of your cake pan. You don't want to go in there and gouge it and have little tiny aluminum burrs. You just want to gingerly cut this. I'm just using a real easy motion. I can feel it cutting through those walnuts and the pistachios, because we'll probably cut this again when we take it out. And that will also help that syrup get down into the interior of this. So just cut gingerly, don't cut real hard like a saw. You just want to cut it softly. So you can see I've made 3 cuts across here, make 4 squares. Now I'm going to come across here probably 5 times and make the square ones. And if you want, you can come in and cut them diagonal. Make the triangles, diamonds. We'll cut a few like that so you can kind of see how it works. Either cut is pretty traditional. Like that. And the other ones will leave it square. Go ahead and throw a little bit more butter on there. I just pretty much leave mine. So I have this extra butter, I'm just going to put that on there. This will bubble up. A little bit. Okay, about like that. I'm going to leave any more topping I put onto the lid later. I want it to burn and scorch while it's in the oven. Sprinkle some cinnamon on top of that. I have some left over. Okay. Now, so we have these cut basically about 4 by 4. We cut a few diamond shapes in there. We're going to go ahead and put that in the oven. But right before, I think I'll go ahead and put that in the oven right now. Now we're going to make our simple syrup for this wonderful baklava. And first we're going to do is start out with about 1 cup of water. And usually the simple syrup's just 1 part water, 1 part sugar. We're going to bring this to a light simmer for about probably 20 minutes or so. I add 1 cup of water, I have 1 cup of sugar. Now when you're working with sugar and water like this, you want to be careful that you don't get any sugar crystals on this side or stuck on this side or out of place, because once this melts down and forms together, that one little crystal could instantly turn this into one solid crystal. So I'll show you how to help prevent that. And you'll just have a solid cluster of solid sugar, just be a solid clunk in there. And usually, traditionally, if you use a light acid like such as lemon, that'll take care of that. You can use Carol syrup. Carol syrup will work for that too, because it has an enzyme that will prevent the sugar from crystallizing. I'm using in this recipe, which I've never done, I'm using about 1 cup of honey. And that's really going to be delicious. Now if you have somebody who has a local beehive, you can go get some fresh honey. Use a local produced item. If not, you can just use it at your local grocery store. This particular recipe also put some orange in there, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to throw a couple of orange chunks in there. You might as well throw those in there too, I don't care, why not? Then we're going to throw a couple of cloves in there. 3 or 4 cloves. Now we will take those out before we put that on our baklava. Now next is very important. I want to show you what I'm going to use vanilla. And vanilla, I'm very fond of vanilla. These are a couple that I've had brought back to me. This one here is from Mexico. And whenever I have a friend that goes on a trip, or a buddy like Robert, he'll go out there and go on a cruise. He'll usually bring me back a bottle of vanilla. This one here is from Honduras, and this one is from Mexico. So wherever he goes to these fun little islands and countries and places, I have him bring me back some. I like this one. I like the Mexican one from Mexico. I like the Honduras too. As you can see, it's almost gone. And talking about my favorite flavor, this is actually a vanilla bean orchid. And this orchid produces these beans like a green bean, and that's where the seeds lie within that pod. Now the crazy thing about this particular orchid is it only blooms once a year. It blooms once a year for one day. So you've really got to be on your toes, because you have to self-pollinate this. You have to actually take the pollen out of it and pollinate it onto the flower when it blooms. And so I haven't done that. This will probably take 2 years before this reaches maturity. This is a mature piece, but it will need to root. And it tends to have like air roots, like a vine grabs a root and then it grabs hold of something. So I've never done this before, but it likes displaced light. But I'm very anxious to grow it this spring and summer. During my retirement, I'll make a little greenhouse for it, because it does like somewhat of a humid environment. Now, right in here we have our sugar, we have our water, we have our honey. We're just going to reduce this. We're going to let it cook for about 20 minutes until it's fairly syrupy. I'm just going to cook it and simmer and get a nice simple syrup out of this. Now I have added the lemon. Will be very nice. That'll keep it from crystallizing. I added some orange in there for some orange flavor, because this recipe had a particular flavoring in it. And I'm going to add my vanilla, about a tablespoon or so. And then we did add about a handful, probably about 5 teaspoons or so of clove. And we will take those out before we portion it on. Now I'm going to let this cook up and simmer. This amount should be enough to cover that amount that we just made of baklava, and I will just spoon this over it and we'll let it sit for a day or so. The great thing about this is it can sit for a couple of days and it becomes much better. It's very flavorful. Again, this is a very, very rich dessert. A little bit goes a long way. So you just let that cook and simmer up and boil up. And I put the orange in there. And that's going to be a little citric. I'm going to add a little bit more lemon to it. And I'll be fairly sure that that's not going to crystallize on me. It smells very delicious. It smells very robust. I'm sure if you wanted to add some other flavors like rum or something to it, you could certainly do that if you wanted to. I'm just going to let this simmer for a little bit. And I just checked the baklava. It looks very nice. It's very flaky. It's very golden. It looks very yummy. And it's cooking pretty well in the convection oven. I'm going to turn it down because I don't want it to scorch. I don't want it to burn. I just want it to lightly simmer and reduce and become a little bit more concentrated. But it does look very good. That was 1 cup sugar, 1 cup water, and then probably about a half a cup of honey. I want that to reduce too much. We will take this and we will portion this over our cooked baklava as soon as it comes out of the oven. Cloves are floating in there, adding a very nice piquant flavor. And again, it's a very simple procedure. Now we'll let that cook and simmer up for a few minutes. Okay, we just took the baklava out of the oven. You can see it's nice and flaky. It's nice and golden brown. The pastry is very, very, very crispy. We're going to go ahead now, and we're going to go ahead and add our simple syrup to this. Now what we're going to do is just let that sit. That simple syrup's going to sit in there and get absorbed by the rest of the ingredients. And you want to let this set and cool for about a day or so. Or you can wait for a couple hours, but it'll be a few hours because this all just came right out of the oven. So that basically concludes it. Just let this cool out, and then in a day or so, 5 or 6 hours, this will cool off, and this will be ready to eat. It's great with a cup of coffee or an after dinner drink too. That's about all there is to it. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you soon. Eat well, laugh hard, and live long. Bye.